Welcome to Twitter Travels for Pete, Next Steps Edition, where I interview former Pete for America staffers about what's next for them and what's next for us as supporters of Democrats. Welcome back, everyone, to Twitter Travels for Pete, Next Steps. Today, I'm so excited to be talking to Anthony Mercurio, who was the National Investments Director for Pete for America during Pete's primary run in 2020, and has been very involved in the Win the Era PAC that Pete started. So we're going to be talking a lot about Win the Era, too. But Anthony, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and be talking to you. How are you?
I'm great. So anybody who's read my book, Traveling the Trail for Pete, knows about how we did do an interview before, and it was a complete interview, and it was great. And it's the only interview of all that I've done, which is like, I don't know, on Zencaster. No, I don't mean to say anything. This is just a tech glitch. I don't know. It can happen anywhere. So, but it was the only one that just the file never finalized. We got that blue circle. It's like, okay. So I guess it was all meant to be, because this is the interview that is meant to be.
Here we are. We made it happen.
Yes.
We're back together.
We made it happen. Yes. I know. It's so good to talk to you. So let's start with your role for Pete's primary campaign, just to refresh everyone's memory. I think it's mostly Team Pete people, or let's just say Pete and Pete Curious. Like, we always welcome more people.
I love it.
So so you were the National Investment Director for the Pete for America. So could you explain what all that entailed? Some of us don't know what's an investment. What does that mean?
Exactly. No, absolutely. And it's great to talk to you, and it's great to, forgive me. It's been a little while, so I'm going to have to, channel back to remember what I was doing 4 years ago.
Go to the Wayback Machine.
Exactly. So I oversaw Pete's fundraising for Pete for America. And so obviously we were really proud of the work we were able to do, and started early on in Pete's campaign to build the fundraising apparatus so we could fuel our campaign. We chose to call our fundraising team, traditionally on a campaign, it would be called a finance team. I chose to call it an investment team because I was asking everybody who was coming onto Team Pete or learning about Pete to make an investment in the future and make an investment in Pete. Because early on, it's hard to imagine the time where people didn't know who he was or weren't excited about him. But early on, we were really introducing him to folks around the country, about who he was and what our, plans for the country were in 2020 and 2019. So I was really focused on asking people to invest and help us, show Pete off to the world. So that's why we called it the investment team. And that entailed building out.
That's brilliant.
Thank you. Saying that entailed, building out a big team across the country of folks that were focused on everything from, grassroots events and, big things at concert venues and things like that a lot of Team Pete, a lot of probably your listeners attended, as well as smaller, more intimate conversations and lunches and dinners and everything in between.
There was a distinction made between a grassroots fundraiser. So some of us helped, right? I'd say many people listening had a grassroots fundraiser code that they could track how much they were raising. And then you also had investment people, just volunteers raising the bigger. So that's a dollar amount, basically, the difference between those two?
Yeah, it was all of the above. I think, on more traditional campaigns, and I've worked for campaigns, national campaigns and smaller campaigns, a lot of folks would, really just focus on the higher dollars, which is great and important. And I think all money is good when you're supporting a good candidate and things like that. But a lot of folks weren't as focused as we were on the kind of grassroots energy. Folks like yourself who were out there pounding the pavement. And it's not just about, every dollar counts and every vote counts, right? And a lot of when you're asking people to invest in a campaign, even if it's $5, that's not only a $5 investment, that's also an investment of your time, of your energy, of your emotions, and really committing yourself to a candidate. So I wanted to make sure that we respected every level of contribution and really celebrated every level of contribution.
Yeah. And is that a metric that's used for campaigns to show their sort of widespread support? That grassroots donors? I mean, I do see that candidates
Absolutely.
posting.
Yeah. I think that's really important. I think because it shows that not only are folks willing to like something on Twitter or sign up for your email list, they're willing to take that next step and engage with campaigns and, say, hey, I want to hear more of you. So here's $5 to
Right.
make sure I hear more of you, kind of thing.
Right. And that could lead to even more involvement, right?
Exactly. And it usually leads to another $5 and a few, down the line, and then maybe another $20 down the line. And so we can really build that overall fundraising, and those kind of long-term supporters are really what keep movements going.
Well, I know I'm speaking for a few other people that I know well from Team Pete, that we felt very involved, and we felt like our contributions of time and effort were being welcomed, and that we were all working on it together. And I don't know, I have heard that is not usual in a campaign. That was something that was the Pete effect. So, how was Pete's campaign different from other campaigns in this respect?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked on a lot of different campaigns, and I think everything is different. Obviously, every campaign has a kind of different energy and ethos. I think what was really special and different about Pete's campaign is that we started with something like the rules of the road and a focus on belonging that really led us from day one. So anytime we had to make a tough decision, or you're faced with a lot of choices every day on how you spend your time and how you spend your resources, we had a set of values and the rules of the road that really helped us, rooted us in who we are and what we do. So I think decisions actually were made a lot easier in that respect. And I think, one reason that I feel so fondly about that campaign back then was that sense of belonging and community building that we had. And I'm, so grateful and glad to hear that you felt recognized and seen by our campaign and our team, and a part of the team because you were helping make it happen.
The rules of the road.
Yeah, that was really important to us. And I think, I think beyond having that on that list of the rules of the road, it also, it also rooted us and kind of guided us for how we built our programs, how we built our fundraising operations. We know we needed to focus on belonging and inclusion, and that's what, guided us to make sure we included every level of contribution in those conversations and that focus. And I think the other thing that really made it different and unique on the fundraising respect, and kind of every respect, I would say, is the room for experimentation and willingness to try things. Right? We did a lot of different things. We threw a lot of stuff against the wall and tried.
Are you including pizza for Pete? Pizza with Pete?
Exactly, everything. I mean, that was a huge success, right? That was
basically we all thought we were going to win that. It's just like statistically, impossible. But I mean, seriously, we thought, I have a great chance.
I think everybody had an equal chance. I don't, we ended up having like 5 winners.
No, I know. But fingers crossed, right?
Exactly. And so a lot of different ideas, and so there was a ton of room for experimentation. Not only ideas that I brought to the table or Pete brought to the table, but also ideas that every level of staff and our team brought to the table. If someone had an idea on my team, I wanted to make sure that we tried it, right? If you put some thought into it, had an idea, all right, let's test it out. Let's see if we can do it, make it happen, and it might be a huge success.
Yeah. Were you even surprised about how things took off? So when did you start?
I'm right at the beginning.
Yeah. So you then witnessed things just blowing up in a good way.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Everything from a CNN town hall, the Austin Tribune, or was it the Trib Fest or Austin City Limits? I forget which one it was. And every little kind of NPR interview or media hit that would kind of spike and get people excited. And obviously the, town hall was a big one in, I believe it was March of 2019.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
February.
So on the fundraising end, like, did you have to like really hustle to like increase the capacity to handle all these donations?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we had an amazing digital team that really focused on building our operation to not only like, catch emails and attention and all of that, but also build the digital operation piece of it. But we also, we focused as a team on the campaign with all the leadership, all the folks that y'all know and met, of kind of like building the sails to catch the wind. So early on, that's kind of how I approach campaigns and things like that. You never know when a big moment is going to come, or if a big moment is going to come. I've been on plenty of campaigns that haven't had those big moments, and that's too bad, because we have great candidates out there, but not every campaign, not every organization has those kind of big moments. But you always want to make sure you build the sails to catch the wind when it comes, and if it comes. And so that's the kind of energy that we brought to it, to make sure we had the infrastructure. Things like the rule of the road really helped root us in things when, in those moments when it felt like a rocket ship, and it was just taken off.
But at the same time, staying grounded.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's really a good analogy.
Who we are. Yeah. That's how we got there, right? And you never want to lose yourself.
Definitely. Wow. I have to move on to when, sadly, Pete suspended the campaign. And I know you had to hustle then for that transition.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had the Win the Era pack. Pete and staffers, I'm sure. I guess I'm not going to talk too much about like how it was all created. But so you were still involved then. You moved over. And in the same capacity as, I don't know if you had a title, or it seems like you were everywhere doing everything.
That's what it felt like for us. I mean, we were all, it's hard to think back to that time because it was just the beginning of the pandemic too, but we were all, that little blip. We were hustling, and, the end of campaigns are always really tough. I think in a lot of ways we won, and felt that we won in a lot of ways because of what we accomplished and the community that we built and how it ended in that way. But thinking back to that time, we also knew that we had a lot of work to do. We knew, and we, learned from the top that Pete, stepped up to support President Biden right away. And so we had our marching orders. And not only did we want to support the now president, and Vice President Biden, for, his reelection. But we also, on the campaign trail, we talked a lot about that, where, the White House isn't the only office that matters. And so we wanted to make sure we supported candidates and at every level and organizations. So that's kind of what was the guiding light with Win the Era. And so I'm a senior advisor to Win the Era and have been since kind of like its inception, helping make sure we're funded and kind of running great program and partnering with great organizations, and keeping the trains on the tracks, as it were.
Well, you were running a lot of the Zoom sessions where Pete was on with the various candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that kind of.
We had about, in 2020, I would love to go back and clock, but it was, 2 to 3 Zooms a night that we were doing.
Oh, yeah. But the great thing is that, we didn't really have anything else to do. So,
exactly.
I mean, we were, of course, committed to the cause, right? But it did help that, hey, what am I doing tonight during lockdown? Oh, I'm going to a Win the Era Zoom.
Exactly. And
so
they were often a lot of fun. So
they were always fun, because it was so reassuring to know that there were more people like Pete out there. I mean, when I say that, with integrity, that naturally follow the rules of the road. And it's, just because we see so much of the negative, because the, really ill-behaving people get a lot of traction, because they're so shocking, and they're so shocking in their behavior. So we don't see these decent people. So, that was just so wonderful. And a great way actually to spend the lockdown. It filled my soul.
Oh, well, I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that. And we also did a lot of
Yeah.
great work. I mean, through that work, we raised a lot of money for candidates across the country, including President Biden, all the way down to county commissioners. That in 2020, when the era endorsed, we highlighted a lot of the important issues that continued, from the campaign and from the ethos of the campaign. So, when we started Win the Era, it's a 501c4 advocacy organization as well as a federal PAC. And so we want to make sure we're advocating for the issues that really drove our campaign effort in 2020. And so things like climate change, that little thing, things like economic justice and racial justice, national service was a big issue, mental health as well. And so we wanted to make sure we highlighted all those issues throughout those Zoom
Right. And
conversations.
kept that momentum.
Yeah, and kept it going, right? That's what inspired a lot of people to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm. So Pete was involved in the endorsement process of or was it a committee including Pete? I'm just curious. I mean, they're all fantastic people.
No, for sure.
I mean, there are too many.
Yeah. No, there were.
What I mean is that there were so many people who would have also been wonderful, and but you had to just keep to a certain number, I'm sure.
Of course, and similar to the rules of the road. I mean, we adopted the rules of the road for Win the Era and kind of had a new version of them, and then also, Pete kind of gave us some guiding principles for the kind of candidates we wanted to endorse and focus and support and things. So we looked at all of the amazing Democratic candidates around the country that we could support and highlight, and we wanted to figure out where we can leverage our impact. So we want to make sure we're doing that properly and making sure our community can be the most impactful it can be. And we also wanted to make sure we're highlighting the, kind of candidates that, for lack of a better word, vibe with the team. So we looked at, obviously, a next generation, through a next generation lens. We want to make sure we're looking at 2054, not just 2020, not just 2020. And so we also looked at things like barrier breakers, people that were, setting some firsts, and just like Pete did when he ran for president and when he went for mayor of South Bend. And so we looked at things like that, and that, helped guide the kind of candidates we looked at and supported. So, thinking back out loud now, I think about a candidate like a Jevin Hodge, who really embraced the Team Pete mantle and the Win the Era mantle.
Oh, for sure.
And he was in a tough race for county commissioner of Maricopa County. I bet he ended up coming up just a little bit short, but he really got excited and energized, and Team Pete really jived with him and kind of jumped on his team. And now he's in a tight race in a really good red to blue district in Arizona's in Arizona for Congress. So, we're excited to, highlight him again in 2022 as an organization and just with our community. But that's the kind of long-term, time that we want to spend with these folks.
Oh, I've talked to him on the phone. He's good about calling donors in person. He said the greatest compliment I ever gave him was, I said, "You remind me of Pete." And he said, "Oh, I can't believe you're saying that." So so he does fit right in with us. So I wish him well, and I continue to donate to him. So for the Win the Era, did you? To what extent did you notice that this true blue Team Pete was just basically immediately moving over to support Win the Era? So
yeah, I mean, I think a ton of folks did. I mean, I think there is a level of education and kind of engagement that has to come when you're focused on a big presidential race, right? That's big. It's getting headlines every day, and that's a little different than talking about a county commissioner in Maricopa County, right? So there's that one, everybody knows what the president is and does. but not everybody knows what a county commissioner is, believe it or not. Like that's just the reality we're living in. They all, like, in all of these local and, for lack of a better word, smaller races, have incredible impact on our day-to-day lives. We know that they are making decisions that are arguably probably affecting us a little more than some of the national decisions that are happening every day. And we're seeing that more and more now, and I think folks are kind of more aware of that, especially with this cycle, with a lot of the stuff happening on the right. But that in 2020, we definitely had a fair amount of education to do with folks and bring people on, and I think there was definitely no hesitation. I wouldn't say that. There was an enthusiasm. I remember, I mean, I'm sure you said it to me too, but like, asking for marching orders or asking for, like, where do we go? What do we do? What do we got? And I think that's the amazing enthusiasm. And, to be honest, I got a lot of marching orders from our community, right? Like I got a lot of, excitement and ideas, and it was, back and forth, right? It was more of a conversation than someone telling us what to do, right? What was amazing to see was some of the folks on Team Pete's grassroots digital communities help build the Biden digital community and reinvent that and reinvigorate that and bring some of the lessons we learned from our campaign in 2020 to all these other amazing campaigns, big and small, across the country. And that's how we learned about a lot of amazing candidates, and that's how we're still working with folks today.
Well, I'm going to get to that, but first of all, what happened next was Pete became Secretary of Transportation. He is on Biden's cabinet, which is fantastic. But that, of course, meant that he had to step away from Win the Era. But Win the Era still exists. But things were still a little quiet. So from my perception, there was a little like a quiet time, and I was assuming, during the pandemic, also things are quiet. But what what have you been working on outside of Win the Era? Especially during that time after Biden was elected and Pete stepped away from the Win the Era.
Yeah, I wish we could say right after we took a sigh of relief and just took a vacation and hung out. But remember, we had those Georgia elections in December and January.
See, I'm so glad that you brought that up. Yes, now I do remember. So I guess it was after that
we all wanted to breathe and relax, but we had those amazing, and we had such amazing organizers and staff and teams and volunteers that immediately picked up and went down to Georgia. And thank God they did, because we've been able to accomplish so much more. And despite the many challenges we've faced, but we've been obviously the Biden administration has been able to accomplish so much because of that month of work that people did in those Georgia specials, the runoffs rather. So
right. Well, thanks for bringing that up. It was that I do remember that now.
Yeah, exactly. And we had to make sure that we, Win the Era and folks supported those efforts. And then we had to, obviously we're so proud of now Secretary Pete for what he's accomplished and obviously what he's doing at the Department of Transportation. And as he stepped off and away from Win the Era, because he's not a political figure, he's a cabinet member right now. We had to kind of think through how we wanted to structure the organization and all of that. And so we luckily have those things called rules of the road that help that kind of answer those questions for us. And so we're able to think about, still focus on those issues. So over the past couple of years, we've yeah, I guess so. Really, it's wild. Really focused on that core set of issues that I mentioned. So things like economic justice, mental health, national service, climate change, and democracy reform, of course, which is still very badly needed, and we're still advocating hard for things like that. So that's a lot of the issue advocacy that we've been able to do, and partnering with wonderful organizations around the country, highlighting those organizations to Team Pete, partnering with them, trying to engage the community around fundraising, around activism, around signing up for this, or making phone calls or whatever it is on that front. And then also we want to make sure we're highlighting candidates, right? In 2021, we had obviously some key elections in places like Virginia and New Jersey and Louisiana, and special elections all over the place that we, had played small roles in. But we also, as Win the Era, wanted to make sure leading up to 2022 that we're highlighting some great folks for people to engage with and learn about that fit within our ethos and kind of fit within the rules of the road. So I know you've seen all of the events that we've done and things like that. And so we'll continue to do those through 2022, through November.
And so for people to get on the email list for those invites and about any kind of candidate highlighting that you're doing in Zoom events, they just can go to the website and sign up?
Yeah, just go to wintheera.com, sign up. It's right on the front there. You can always shoot me a note, Anthony@wintheera.com. Don't be shy. I think a lot of folks have my email probably. But I also follow us on social, obviously. We have that, but I think, so it's @wintheera, I believe. I'm pretty sure. I think I just tweeted about it today, so I'm pretty sure it's @wintheera.
Yeah. I saw the Win the Era announcement for something like an event tonight that, of course, by the time this podcast is released, that will have passed already. But there will be more, right?
There will be more. No, absolutely.
Because it's the midterms.
Yeah, let's use tonight as an example. And I think there's an amazing Team Pete fan who I don't know who this is actually, but thank you. I'm saying this out into the ethos that puts a lot of these videos online, which is amazing.
I think that's a secret, whoever that is.
I think it is a secret too. It's crazy. I don't know who it is. I love it. But it's helpful for me. But you can watch it there. But tonight's event is with some amazing state legislators. So we're partnering with the DLCC, which is an incredible organization that
what is that?
The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. So it's kind of like the DSCC or the DCCC for House members of the Senate, but for state legislators. Legislators.
And I have to say, people have seen what happens within the 2020 election and what Trump and his friends tried to do. That we saw the importance of the state legislatures. It's like
They're
crazy.
So important.
It wasn't until they got crazy that we noticed.
And I think if you watch tonight's event, you'll hear that they've been crazy for a little while. It's just I'm glad everybody were engaging and learning more about them now because of what happened in 2020 with the election. Mm-hmm. But we're also they haven't gotten less crazy. I will say that. They've gotten more intense, and these battles that they're fighting are
consequential.
They're the incubators for some of the crazy policy or really intense and extreme policy you're seeing at the national level.
Oh my gosh, what a way to think of it.
Yeah, so in these really deep red states where there's no progressive or democratic voices because they're not getting elected in some ways, they're testing out these wild laws like the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. Right? Or things like that have percolated to the national consciousness. But this is where all these things are starting. So that's why we want to make sure we highlight amazing state legislators like Senator Mallory McMorrow from Michigan, Senator Chevron Jones from Florida, and Senator Sandra Hadegui from Nevada, who are going to be with us tonight to kind of talk about what's going on in the states this year. Florida, Nevada, and Michigan are interesting, very different states, but I can't wait to hear a lot of the probably same stories that they're all experiencing. So
right. So just imagine what we could accomplish if we could shift a huge part of the electorate to being focused on the midterms of local. Just because so much of the focus, as you know, is the presidential race, and then everybody just falls asleep.
Exactly.
So for 4 years.
And I will say, your donations go a lot longer, got a lot further. I would say at the local level, and you can rest assured or rest unassured, maybe, that the right has not forgotten about state legislatures, and the extreme right has not. So
yes,
that's why we want to make sure that we're stepping up to highlight that. And I think Team Pete's community is going to be really integral. So I say all of that just for tonight as an example, and folks who are listening to the podcast can go back and check it out. But we're going to continue to do events like that. We did events with some secretaries of state. We did events with some attorneys general and other folks that don't necessarily get the national headlines.
Right. So that's highlighting them, and but donating is key. So now I want to ask you my main questions that a newbie to the political process and fundraising, which I didn't really know before being involved with the Pete campaign, is the difference between the different kinds of contributions and the effect or the the benefit they might have. So first of all, the sustaining, is that what it's called? The monthly,
a sustaining contribution, like a monthly contribution?
Right. So I'm always asked on Act Blue, do you want to make this monthly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, so the first time I saw that, I thought, what? Like, are you kidding? Anyway,
yeah.
I know, can you talk about first that, like how valuable those kinds of contributions are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I 100%. So headline, really valuable. Let me tell you why. They are campaigns as you're running, you're constantly balancing money in, just like any organization, money in versus money out. And you want to make sure you can build your team and hire people and scale and grow. But you're also, waiting on money because you're fundraising constantly. You've got to fill the coffers so you can spend the money. To run your campaign. Those sustaining contributions really honestly help us budget. They help us budget that we know already in, say, the month of September, the month of, next month, that we're able to, we can count on X amount of dollars from our recurring and our sustaining contributors and supporters. So we know that we have this coming in on top of what we're going to raise from other things, whether it's email program or, and some events that we have, but it's more solid data rather than, some events that you don't know. Maybe the contribution is going to come in, maybe it's not some days. And then you'll obviously have, moments where you'll have lots more contributions than you expected, or you hope to have those moments. But at that point, it can be sometimes too late to hire staff because you didn't plan on that, right? So the sustaining contributions can be really helpful.
When you look at those numbers, though, is there the statistic that you use that some people will change their mind about it? It's not a guarantee, because that is you're able to remove,
for sure. You definitely have to account on some drop off, and I don't know, I don't know the exact. There is a percentage drop off that you can expect. So you budget for like maybe 85% of them, right? To know that you're going to have that money with a little drop off. But it's generally pretty good if someone signs up to, to your earlier question about getting involved in campaigns. We think about something called, like, to bring you under the hood a little bit, we think about something called the ladder of engagement, where maybe the first step is signing up on an email list. The second step is maybe giving $5. Maybe the third step is, giving $25. And maybe the next step is giving a sustaining contribution, right? So you're moving people to engage deeper with the campaign on fundraising and things like that. And then maybe the step after that is, signing up to be a grassroots fundraiser or host a fundraiser or make calls or anything like that, right? So,
well, I think what happened on the Pete campaign was a lot of us donated to the max allowable, which we had never done before, never even close, never close. And then we still wanted to help, and so that's how you got your fundraisers.
Exactly.
It's like, I still need to do something.
And we never had a shortage of things for anybody to do.
Oh, well, thank you for that. But the timing, like if you had, a lump sum that you wanted to donate, so what about the timing of that? It seems like, some people might naturally think, well, I'm just going to wait until like October.
So I would say
earlier is better.
Don't wait.
they can't really do much with it in November, right? Is that
Yeah,
kind of getting too
that's
late?
very true. That is very astute, and thank you for saying that. I think,
But seriously, the new like neophytes, like I am not speaking just. I mean, I know anybody new coming to this, we just are geared to thinking that it's the fall. That's when we care. We just start to ramp up, and that might be okay for the final get out the vote door knocking, right? But otherwise, that money is not going to help as much as it would earlier.
absolutely. I think there's a whole organization called Emily's List that was founded on this purpose, decades ago. That's Emily's List stands for Early Money is Like Yeast. It helps campaigns rise.
Whoa.
So
I never knew that. I never bothered to check.
Which is fun. Also, maybe
fantastic.
It was named after someone named Emily, but I always know it as early money is like yeast.
Hey, everybody's going to remember that now after listening to this.
Well, they're a fantastic organization that has helped women step into the political arena and addressed a major problem that female candidates just couldn't raise money like male candidates could. And so that's what Emily's List worked on. And I think, that lesson is true for a lot of folks. There's, folks like the Victory Fund for LGBTQ candidates and Black PAC for African-American candidates and other things. So like another Latino Victory Fund, there's a whole gamut of them. But on your question about early money or money in general, when you should give, earlier the better in general, because it allows, again, for people to build campaigns for the long term, right?
And also to show their viability too, like because there are fundraising reports.
100%. I mean, it is really important, and I think we look back to, if you look at political campaigns, there's not a ton of milestones that happen before voting. There's debates, there's conversations, there's events, there's things like that. But one of the milestones we look at are fundraising reports, right? Because they do show campaigns' viability and potential. So that's definitely helpful in that respect, but also budgetarily, like really helping campaigns hire and build earlier. You can't hire an organizer on October 15th to do work with election days on November 3rd. You don't have time to do that. And we appreciate the money and we love that. But by that time, a lot of the airtime for ads is bought. A lot of things are saturated. But it would have been really helpful to have an organizer 3 months earlier or 6 months earlier, knocking doors and having more conversations. And building, as I mentioned, building those sails to catch the wind. Help us build the sails early on so we can catch the wind when people tune in and get excited and engaged on campaigns.
So now for the midterms, this podcast will probably come out the very end of August. So now's the time, basically, because it's almost getting to be, I don't know, I don't want to say too late, but I mean, now's a really critical time if you haven't already donated to a candidate, but you want to just, get in there in September.
Absolutely. I mean, I think as of today, as of this recording, we are 76 days till Election Day, something like that. And, so it'll be even sooner when you release this. So definitely now is the time. And I think, focus on where you want to have your impact and who inspires you and, what we can do. And what you want to accomplish. But definitely if you're thinking about giving to a candidate, sooner the better.
And $5, if you can only give $5, you shouldn't think, oh, that's not enough. I'm not even going to do it.
Exactly. You should definitely give and engage if you can and are motivated to do so. Obviously, if you can't afford to give, you shouldn't break the bank to do so. But there are lots of ways for folks to get engaged, volunteering and all of that stuff. On campaigns, but I would say if you can give $5 here and there, that's really wonderful and helpful for every level of campaign. And as I said earlier, if you want your money to go a little further, a lot of these local and state level races they don't raise the amount of sums that these big federal races. I'm not I don't want to throw shade at, yeah, I'm not throwing shade at any other campaign, but when I look back at, like a campaign like Amy McGrath's in Kentucky, I think she ended up raising $96 million for a race that, it was a tough, I mean, she obviously didn't win. Senator McConnell was reelected, which is a big old bummer. And we all can't stand Mitch McConnell. But, if half of that money raised for Amy was spent anywhere else, on state legislatures, we could have flipped 2 or 3 chambers, so like that's what I think about. And obviously she ran a great, it was a tough race and a tough campaign. So
Oh, yeah.
just using her as an example, just because of the vast amount of sums of money, not because of her.
Yes.
But,
a huge amount. Wow. So, this is how naive I was. I didn't fully realize and I have to go way back to my youth. Haha. I didn't fully realize that candidates are relying 100% on fundraising, basically. That, there's what other sources of income are there?
Unless you're Mike Bloomberg, there's
right.
Not a lot. Yeah. Unless you're a self-funder, you're raising all your money for your campaign, and you usually start with 0. So.
Right. So it's just like, oh, yeah. I say these on my podcast. I'm the great person. So my naivete, that I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to show it, just in case there's one person listening who also, thought the same. So I want to make sure that
no, absolutely. I mean, thank you for saying that's totally true, right? Like, I think that there's politics is big and crazy, and it seems like everything's all together in such a big machine, and in a lot of ways it is, a big apparatus. But it's also just people. And so these campaigns do just start with good, excited people that want to make change in their community and decide to step up and do it. And
politics at its best is soulcraft. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's people.
It's people.
That's how, it's a community.
Exactly. And these campaigns do start with nothing, right? You start with nothing in the tank, or you start with, whenever I work with a candidate or a new candidate, or someone decides to run for office, and maybe they call me because they know I'm in work in politics and have done this before, the first piece of advice is you make a list of everybody you know, and you call them and you ask them for money. Like, that's what I say.
Well, so a lot of people are uncomfortable with that at first. But the thing is, if you're going to run for office, you have to get over that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You do. And that's why I asked people to invest in Pete. It's a gift, I guess. But it's also, I'm asking you to invest in a campaign or an effort. If I'm running for office or someone's running for office, you're asking them to help you make change. I like to think of it as you're giving people an opportunity to make change. Here's an opportunity for you to help make change in your community by giving me money. I'm giving you an opportunity, not just asking you for money. Just reframe that in your head, and that
exactly.
Helps. It makes it
to allow the candidate to, go around, travel around, and get on the soapbox and spread the word. So You're helping spread the word. Wow. So when the era is it's gonna stay. I think it's gonna stick around.
That's right? The goal.
So what about the future? If you want to speak to for you personally, or what's up for the future of when the era, are you going to stay? Is fundraising your gig, or you're gonna switch things up?
I love that's so funny. I think one thing on the Win the Era side, we are dedicated to this community and this amazing group of supporters. And I love spending time with folks from this community. I want to make sure we keep it thriving, and not only give people opportunities to engage in politics and advocacy and issue work, but also hear from everybody and hear what you want to engage in, and keep that alive for the future. So
I love hearing that.
That's what we want to keep doing. And so that's, on the Win the Era front. And obviously it'll take different shapes over time, but we have our core kind of solid. rules of the road and the issues that we're focused on. So we're excited to continue doing that, and continue to partner with other great organizations and highlight the amazing work that's being done in the space. And then, on the personal front, I think I like to spend time thinking about how I can make the most impact in the world and how I can make change. And, I really like fundraising. I really like bringing communities of people together to fund efforts and, stop the attacks on our democracy, stop the rollback that we're seeing in a lot of ways, and make sure we're uplifting some of the great stories that are happening out there. So whatever way I can continue to do that, I will continue to do that. So I'll probably work with a lot of candidates and fundraise for folks, or also work with people to help, give money away effectively and make sure people are impacting in the way that they want to do that, and all of the above in politics. Making sure one day maybe I'll step away, but that day is not right now.
Oh, well, we are fortunate.
Too much work to be done,
you.
Sue Ann. We got to do it.
Oh my gosh. And you have so much enthusiasm and energy. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I get motivated. This is an exciting conversation too. And I think,
it's contagious.
That's one of the great things about politics is it is contagious, right? That energy and that excitement, because a lot of days are pretty dark and pretty difficult that we're facing, right? With some of the things that we're seeing, it's really scary. I mean, the rollback of women's rights, of gay rights, of things we're facing is really dark and hard to look at. But there is an exciting momentum that is contagious and exciting in this community that we want to keep going.
And that's going to be, instead of thinking that what's the story of this is a dark period in our history, and we haven't lived in the middle of a chapter or more than one chapter of a history book. We always read that, this is the Depression, this is what happened then, and now we know, hindsight, that everything ended up okay, right? But now when you're in the middle of it, you can just imagine how unsettling, I guess, is the mildest way to put it. It was for people to have lived through these times, any kind of time of disruption and uncertainty, and so, but the real story is going to be how we get out of it. It might take a while. So if we looked back at, if it's a period that's going to resolve itself and will hopefully correct to decency again, that's exciting. And the thing is, I got to stay healthy. I got to be around for when things are good again.
Exactly. There's no other option, unfortunately.
There's no other option.
We got to keep pushing forward and fighting, and do it while we're taking care of ourselves. But that's we all need to lift each other up and keep the fight on. Right, and we just can't accept. So we can define that for the era that must come next. It's coming whether we like it or not. We just got to decide what it looks like. You mean we need to win the era? I guess so. I think we need to win the era, Sue Ann. I think that's what we need to do. Oh my gosh. Well, everybody asks, when Pete's in interviews and anybody working with Pete, is Pete going to run for president again? And, that I'm not going to ask that, and I'm not even going to ask you, would you also work for Pete if he ran again? Because, what? I think it's a given that we'd all show up for him. If whatever he does, I always say, I support him no matter what he chooses to do. But who knows? In the future, we might all be together again in a presidential campaign. And the future is, who knows what's going to happen. I think the main focus is the important work that's, in right now in 2022. Obviously, we got to focus on that. And I think the other thing is, we've talked about this whole hour is the issues and the kind of long-term era that we're focused on. That's the energy that we need to bring to it. And, it's different and it's going to evolve and change, but what we're doing right now is all together as well. And I think, I can't wait to see folks in person again too, as we come back together more and more in person. But, I can't wait to hear, and I've already heard so many stories of folks from Team Pete that, have worked on various campaigns or volunteered with this campaign or this person or that person, and just the amazing stories that we're hearing and all the lessons and things that we're learning, and we're just teaching each other. And that's continuing to happen every day. And I'm so grateful for that. And I can't wait for that to continue. I'm also keeping learning and evolving and growing and changing too, because I want to make sure that we're always fresh and at the forefront of what needs to happen.
Right. And the community. So it didn't really end, because, like you say, you're still working with the community here in Win the Era, and we're still engaged. And that might not be, I don't think that's the usual way campaigns go. So that's delightful. I remember when the Era was created, I thought, okay, it's not over. We can still see each other.
We're still hanging out, and I'll see you tonight.
Yeah.
I'll see you in a couple hours.
Okay. Thank you so much for talking to me today. I think it's all this information about the ins and outs of fundraising is so important for people to know, and also that, if I can summarize, yes, the importance of supporting those local races. Just making sure that we're from the ground up, I don't know if that's quite right, but from the local on up, supporting great candidates.
Absolutely. No, and thank you so much for doing this. And this is a way to keep the community together that you're doing, and I appreciate that. And always happy to, lift the veil on fundraising for all of our political nerds out there, because we all love it.
I know what I'm going to be doing later today is I'm going to be donating some money.
I love it. I have a few candidates that you could give to, so we're good on that.
Yeah, because I have been sort of thinking, I'll just wait, because sometimes you just don't get around to it. And then I'm just thinking after this conversation, oh my gosh, I'm doing what's not good. So, yeah, going to get on Act Blue. Okay, Anthony. Well, continue the good work, and I'm so happy that I will still be seeing you around.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Twitter Travels for Pete Next Steps Edition. Now everybody get to work.